Wonderful. So we are officially broadcasting and it is right on the button. And today we're going to be getting things kicked off in about 30 more seconds. I just want to give a chance for everybody to get logged in, get their audio set up. And we've got a great speaker for you and some really good content. So I can see participants pouring in, which is awesome.
Starting to see some familiar names in there as well.
Yeah.
Agata, I see you joining us. Thanks for last time. Jennifer Irwin, Julie Via. It's good. Some repeats.
I love it. Yeah.
A couple of members of the Culture Builders Mastermind group there as well.
A couple of members of our team. Olga, welcome, my dear. Look at this. People are just pouring in. Wonderful. I think I'll get things kicked off. Your hosts today are myself, Jason Lindstrom. I am the CEO of Bucket List Rewards. And with me is Reese Green, the CEO and founder over at Trailblaze Partners. And in a moment, we'll be introducing today's speaker. And more importantly, we're going to be talking about how to scale your company culture, which I know is a really relevant topic for today. What normally at this point, we'd throw up an opening poll question. However, what I'd love to encourage everybody to do is just in the comments window, share with us, what do you want to learn most about today? Michel is a very smart / knowledgeable man in the field of culture and scaling culture. But why don't we open it up to you guys and just plug in your questions or comments or thoughts? What would you like to hear about today?
Don't everybody go at once.
I'll share a couple of topics I'm interested in, and I do believe Michel's got expertise, and I'm just going to type this in. One is around building good career paths, like how do you scale people up inside of your team, for example, and that's a theme I've been hearing a lot about. It looks like, oh wow, here they come. Looks like Christine Russell said, overcoming previous bad culture habits. James Thornley, great question. How do we weave culture through our brand? That's an awesome one. Like, how do you live your culture and I guess share that with the public?
Mm-hmm. I love that question of how do you scale culture across different countries in Europe. We had that question from a client just a couple of days ago, and it's one I'm grappling with at the moment. So it's a really good question.
Awesome. And one more from Millie, how scaling can help with retention. And D Pepper, this is awesome. How to create a supportive culture from the bottom up while waiting for the leaders to get on board. These are awesome. These are awesome team. Curtis Steeksmith, thank you. Good to see you, sir. How do we effectively measure morale? Wonderful. So these are some great topics. We're going to kind of put those in our back pocket and we're going to jump into things. So what the heck is this whole webinar about? At the end of the day, we're on a mission to help people leaders build the best cultures possible. So it's about connecting you with one another and connecting you with great speakers like Michel. To introduce Michel, I'm going to turn it over to Reese, and then we'll kick off today's conversation.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be introducing Michel. I've known Michel since 2008 when we were both call center agents, making an hourly wage, doing our thing, learning as much as we could. And we bonded over business and conversations about people and culture and customer experience and all the stuff that Michel has gone on to build a fantastic career around as an expert speaker, best-selling author and entrepreneur. He's done some absolutely incredible stuff and spoken at some world-leading brands, including McDonald's, Lush, Alfa Romeo, and many more. Not to mention the 0 to 150 employee build as an entrepreneur he went through over the course of 2 years. So tons to learn. I really enjoy learning from Michel personally. We often have some great debates, and I'm hoping today is going to be one of those sessions where we maybe get into it a little bit.
Guys, thank you, Jason, Reese, for having me, and all the participants that have joined us. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And it's always humbling to have even one person care to listen to me speak other than my fiance. And even then it's questionable. Reese, can I share a story about how we met?
Yeah, please go for it.
So the story goes like this, how I remember. Reese was working in the call center of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, as was I, but I worked in the day, he worked in the evening, taking Australian bound or based calls. And one day somebody called in sick, so I covered for that individual. I worked the graveyard shift with Reese, and it was just the two of us in this. How many seats did the call center have at the time? It was the fifth floor, I think. Way more than we needed, that's for sure. And we talked, as Reese said, about business and so forth. And I remember him saying, I was like, what are you doing, or something? You were scribbling something on a notepad. And he said, oh, my girlfriend, his now wife at the time, works at a restaurant called Cafe Crepe. And I'm trying to figure out, if they added one more table with 2 more seats, how much additional revenue that little store would get. And I thought to myself, I was like, this guy's like a big nerd, but he's really nice. But you've grown to become my nerd, and I care about you and your family a lot, and I really value our friendship.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Well, I appreciate you saying that. From one nerd to, I guess, the cool guy, maybe.
Well, that's how I see myself,
dude. And then people bought it. It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Congratulations. It's been a pleasure to watch your career develop. So I think there's enough of that mutual admiration. Let's jump into some of the pre-prepared questions and get this thing on the road. So, Michel, when was company culture first introduced to you? Kind of when, how, how did this come about?
It was our time at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. You couldn't escape it. It was something that was promoted internally and externally, and it became a part of the brand, which is, I'm happy. I didn't catch the name of the individual that asked in the questions about culture and brand, and I can unpack that in a moment. But it started at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. But curious, I saw that company culture was a growth mechanism, and I aspired to be an entrepreneur one day. And while everybody was focusing on traditional topics like marketing and PR and finance and marketing, all things that are all very relevant, I was trying to find something different. So I studied the company while we were working there and recognized that company culture was something. At the time, the company in, let's just say, North America, that was pounding their chests even harder around company culture was Zappos. And then I read some articles that they went from, pardon me, 1 million to 1 billion in 10 years. And I thought that was pretty explosive growth. And they didn't even ever talk about their merchandise. They just kept coming back to culture, and then customer experience followed. So that is how I was first introduced to it. I was very early. Because I was introduced to it by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And that was just a springboard. From there, it just became a part of my career and my personal brand. And it is anybody on this call, anybody that has committed their career to culture or employees, like, I'm very bullish on anybody going down that space. If I would start my career all over again, I would go down the same path. And any individual that asks me for advice or anything, I say, keep pounding this drum. It's a great way to build a business.
Yeah. You touched on brand and culture and kind of weaving those two together. I know you've done that a few times. You've worked and advised many companies on that process. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I like, company culture can be a part of your marketing mix in terms of the messaging. If you think about how we behave as consumers, everybody on this call, often we gravitate to the company that makes us feel a certain emotion regarding, like, I revere them, I admire them. Now, you can revere and admire companies for a myriad of different reasons, but for me, I like it when I'm doing business with a company that I believe is doing good. Doing well, right by their employees, by their communities, and so forth. So share those stories. There's content that my friend Clay introduced me to that goes like this. He says, there's look at me content, which is look what we sell, look at our features, look at this. And then there's learn from me content. and the learn from me content can have a foundation of company culture. Like, learn how we're delivering these products to you, learn the people behind the brand, learn about our company culture and what we stand for. And I think that, in a very crowded, every industry is crowded. So how do you break through with a message that is similar, but also you have this other core messaging that really cuts through all that noise? And I like that, because what do you want your current and prospective customers to think and feel? And it actually goes beyond that. Suppliers, investors, anybody that touches the brand, like, what do you want them to think and feel when they see your logo, visit your website? If you can craft a message to have your current and prospective customers think like, I like them, they seem genuine, I think you're onto something.
Well, and kind of a follow-up question on that. It's funny when you're talking and you're kind of sharing the importance of it. Like, some brands are springing to mind, things that I find important, things like Patagonia.
Yep.
That book, like Let My People Go Surfing, and like all these companies are starting to spring to mind. But maybe tactically, if you could share a story about a company who's doing that well, like how do you bring the culture alive to the brand? Is it like a great mission statement on the website? Is it videos? Like, how do you bring that to the forefront? And if you could share a story or a tactic, it'd be super interesting to hear about.
It's not the mission on the website. It's not the core values, because Enron's core value is integrity one time. It's very simple to say that, but if somebody scratches the surface and don't see what they expect to be underneath that, then you're put on a wrong pedestal, one that you probably don't want to be on. What I would like to do, and what I like seeing companies do, so what I like to do with our companies, and then what I like to see from a consumer perspective, is just real stories about the culture. Like, if you want customers and clients and the media to talk about your brand, have something worth talking about. And having a product that is marginally better than your competitor will get you a certain amount of media or customers buying it. But if you're trying to build a brand for decades rather than the next couple quarters, really share the stories of the people that are actually building the company, because that is important to, maybe not to everyone, but it's important to the customers that are truly going to be your first early adopters, that will help you kind of cross the chasm so that you have other customers that will adopt your product as well too. And from an operator's perspective, like, I just want to build a company that people like, it feels good when you go to work and understand when customers come to you or your community comes to you and says, I really loved your company. And if it's more than just about your product, that helps you kind of break through when you are inevitably tired from running your business. Like, it gives you a greater sense of purpose and helps me move forward when I'm, hitting a wall, if you will.
That's great. Yeah, and I know purpose is something that's really important to you, and you talk about your 3P strategy and your people first culture. Can you talk that through for us? Like, how did you come to that as being the way you want to operate, and how did that come to life?
It's the basis of the book, and it really materialized over up to a month of just thinking about why is it that every company will tell you they have a great company culture, right? Because it's the thing that you got to do. Like, Inc. magazine tells you got to have a strong company culture. And then we go on down this path, which kind of seems like a campaign rather than a foundation of the company. Like, you can't fake company culture. But I was trying to understand, why is it that some fall short of creating a great company culture while others succeed? And not to be cynical, but I think we might be able to debate this, but for the most part, you take 100 companies, I think less than 50% of those companies have a great company culture, like a genuine one, right? And when I started thinking about what is it that makes companies fall short while others will thrive, it eventually created this thing called the 3P strategy. Um, and the 3Ps stand for purpose, process, and profit. So purpose is like, what is the purpose of each one of us as individuals that lead our respective companies? Like, why do we come to work? Each one of us, right? And if it's just to make money, it's a really shallow goal, and you're going to burn out, and you're not going to truly love what you do. And I know that sounds like a platitude, but it's true. Like each of us on this call have met somebody who has tried just to earn money, and they burnt out and are probably doing something else from what they told us they were going to do. What is the purpose of our employees? Like each one of us, Reese, when we were at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we didn't expect to be the vice president of, well, actually, I think you came close to growing into that role, right? But like, we knew one day we were going to do our own thing, right? That was one of our purpose was to contribute to the success of the company, learn, and use that as a springboard to the next thing. So that was our purpose. And each one of our team members, company-wide, whether you have one employee or 100,000, each have their individual purposes. And it's our responsibility as leaders of our company to get them there, with or without the company. Now, I was going to speak, I lost a keynote speaking engagement in 2019 because I was asked to deliver a message, but the organization said, we don't want you to say that. We don't want you to tell people that they should be okay with leaving. And then I just said, I can't not say that because I'm not being authentic, and you'll see that I'm not delivering the message that I want to deliver. One of the most celebratory times as a leader of our companies is when it is our company culture that helped an individual do the next thing. And I have a gentleman in our hospitality company named Riley Cox. He's our top 3 bartender system wide. And these restaurants are small places, mom and pops. They're like 16,000 square feet. They're big operations. And Riley is one of our highest performers. So you would think like we're going to try to keep him as long as we can, get him into management and so forth. And we have asked him if he wants to be a part of management because he's such a high performer. Culture fit, exceptional on the skills side. But while he was working with us, he was studying to get his PhD in biotech. So he's incredibly smart too, just the entire package. And when I asked him, like, what is your purpose? Like, what do you want to do with your career? He says, I want to work on the business development side of a cannabis company. And that's when, for me, it was like, that's now my job. I have to leverage my network, my entrepreneur group, to find out who would hire him, because that's helping him get his purpose. And when his peers see that we're helping these individuals, place them outside of the company, we're acting as their headhunters, essentially. Watch how engagement just drives spikes. Watch how productivity increases, absenteeism goes down. And I'm often pressed on like, well, how do you know what's going to happen? I believe in humanity. I believe in doing right by others, and maybe you're going to get screwed over one time, right? But if you're so paranoid by that, then why even cross the street tomorrow? Because somebody was once hit by a car one time, right? Like, it's just, I'm not paralyzed by the what ifs of helping people achieve their purpose, because there's enough good. And if you do get wronged, so be it. Shame on them. You move forward, right? And then the last purpose is, what are the purpose of the customers? Like, each one of your customers will come to do business with you with different outcomes. You know, if I'm to think about a bank and the purpose of customers there, you know, God forbid I have to go back into a retail bank. I don't ever want to go back into a retail bank, right? Because my purpose is to save time, to do things that I actually want to do, like walk my dog. I don't want to go to a bank. But my mom, if I was a bank teller, I'd be like, oh my God, she's here again. Because she'll talk to you for 20 minutes about nothing. And God bless her, she's an angel. But like, you have to understand, like, what is the purpose of your customers? Some is like to have deep connections, and others are to be more transactional. How do you set your company culture up for that, so that your team members know how to onboard customers into your culture? um, and then from there, it's building process, like, how do we hire properly, right? What's the interview process like? What's the onboarding process like? What do our customers experience? And that's where the kind of the operations come into, like the actual nuts and bolts of it. And that often, and I would be curious to know your guys' opinion on this. Um, Sometimes I see companies go straight into solution mode, building initiatives, whether they're warranted or not, without really understanding, like, why are we building this? What is the foundation? Like, is this just a campaign, or are we actually doing this for the long term? So I'll kick it over to you guys, because I would love for this to be a two-way dialogue. But do you guys see that as well? Like, I see some entrepreneurs read a Forbes magazine article, be like, we got to do that. And I was like, well, you kind of have to do more before that.
You want to take that one, Jason, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I try to, I'll give you like a high level summary of what I'm doing and kind of what we're doing. We're trying to be like really deliberate about our culture and relating to the three P's, like the process, the people, and the purpose. I do love process, but I love elegant, simple process. And so specifically, we're trying to keep, and one more thing we're trying to do is like kind of follow a lean methodology when it comes to applying process. So what's the simplest solution today that'll scale with us for the medium to long term? In terms of your very specific questions, do we do campaigns or do we follow longer term strategies? It's definitely longer term strategies. So like when we roll out a career path, we try to or when we recruit somebody into the company, we genuinely try to set them up for success for the long term. And relating back to what you said earlier, like helping them, even if it's finding a job outside the company, we too would massively support that. Well, what I found is if you can really genuinely help get behind somebody in their life, even if they end up leaving you, that story will get told and retold hundreds of times, not just by the person who you help, but by all their colleagues at work. And there's kind of those stories you can put on your website, on your career page, but then there's like the reality, like what's actually happening inside your organization. If you can like really support somebody personally, help them buy a new house, help them achieve a personal goal, whatever that is, those are the things that get the stories that get retold again and again. And that's how you act like a magnet to pull in all this great talent. That's kind of my 2 cents on that topic. But Reese, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think where you're heading on that a little bit, Michelle, is like culture is sometimes seen as a cure-all, but it doesn't cure all. And so, yeah, we position in market as culture consultants, and so we get people who want to solve their problems with culture. And sometimes, and this is why me, the operations guy, makes sense in our business, is because sometimes the root cause of the problem isn't your culture, it's your operations, or it's your strategy. You got too many different services, which would probably be our problem as a business right now, pot calling the kettle black. But I think big picture, it's really hard to see the forest for the trees. And so you're in it day in, day out, and you see the problem really close up, and then you read that Forbes article and you go, hey, I'd really like my business to look like that. And there's something that's not working quite right. But because you're so close to the problem, you haven't seen the problem in enough detail to go solve it. So you go, well, let's go try this thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I can definitely empathize and have done that thing myself many times. But yeah, I agree. Like breaking it down, and I like the way you think and talk about the individual purpose, and getting deep on the why. Because I think if you can understand as much as possible the individual purpose and reason for purchase, you can build your business and something that's really special around that. I always think about mini cars.
Cooper, mini cars, yeah.
And how many options they have for the configuration of those vehicles. You can go online and you can buy it's for the same price, sometimes depending on what options you choose, but you can get a very, very different looking car to your neighbor down the street who has also bought a Mini Cooper. And I think from a product tailoring, they were really early in trying to get close to individuals being able to purchase what they want. But I think from a macro perspective, we're moving more and more towards that of how do we cater to individuals, and the more people get that from companies in the way they can purchase, the more they're going to expect that from their employers. I find kind of expectations of employers tend to follow consumer expectations.
So I can share a real life example of how the 3P methodology would work within the new business that I'm building. Just as a side note, I'm moving from full service restaurants to the ones where you would sit down and be served for an hour to 2 hours to fast casual. Fast casual is like a Chipotle type brand. Um, so if using the 3P methodology, we understand the purpose of our employees. So an individual like Riley Cox, who I'd mentioned, the process, how do we create a process to make that purpose happen? So one of the things that I haven't baked this initiative in just yet, but I'm getting close. When a team member of ours outwardly expresses like, I'm looking for, this is what I want to do, and they're prepared to do that. So Riley graduates from the University of Toronto. He's ready to exit. I'm thinking of creating a landing page on our website that'll be like brasaperuvian.com/for hire. And we're profiling the people who currently work with us, have a bio and a picture of them, and the type of industry that they are looking to go into, and connect future employer with team member. That's a strategy that you probably would never see before, and would have some people kind of tilt their heads and think that we're doing ourselves a disservice. Now, so that's the purpose process. What is the profit from this? The profit, some cynical people might say, well, you're losing one of your best people. For me, it's like, no, you could get great PR from that. Riley's going to be a great ambassador of the brand and recruit a family member or friend. Like, again, going back to betting on humanity, I think our companies will do just fine if we have that at the, like, that's our knee-jerk reaction of how we make our decisions. And I do have a bit of a brand marketing PR kind of background. I know enough that I'm like, I could pitch that to the media. What's that worth? Tens of thousands of dollars of brand impressions. I like that. Like, I would take that any day. So that's how the 3P strategy kind of works in real time, if you will. And yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, mate. And I know you're going really deep on this stuff as you're thinking about getting Brasa up and running and creating the company that you kind of have in your head. What's some of the other stuff? I know you've done some. Let me ask you a leading question. You mentioned suppliers earlier. Like, talk through some of the interesting stuff you've done to engage your suppliers in that process and make them feel a part of your culture.
Yeah. So a supplier is someone we pay, right? And I remember hearing somebody speak to a supplier in our hospitality company and say, don't forget who pays who. And that really bothered me, because is it because we are the customer that we should be little or not deliver the great experience to our suppliers? No, like, if you're truly going to have a great culture of putting people first, that includes the people you pay, right? Like your suppliers, your bankers, banking representatives, and so forth. So anybody that interacts with your brand should be treated like your best customer, full stop. Like, there's no ways around that for me. But with our suppliers, what we do is, I am not short of produce suppliers, right? There's a lot in Ontario. But what I'm doing is, when I interview them to see who I want to work with, I show them our values. I show them kind of our purpose and our mission and what we're trying to build. And I'm trying to pay attention to, like, who has that spark in their eye? Who's going to bet on us at one store when we're trying to get to 1,000? And I would actually, off within reason, I might consider even paying a little bit more for the producer or supplier that might buy into us, has better customer service and so forth, rather than just going with the cheaper option. But my approach to suppliers is really building them within our culture. And profit sharing, who says profit sharing just has to be for your employees? Like, if you have an account manager who is fully committed to your company and being successful, why can't you make them a part of why can't you make that individual a part of your profit sharing program? Like the bloggers that write about you, the influencers, Reese, you've known me for too long. I'm sorry, but to your ever dismay. But you know how I have this tendency to be like, what if? Like, could we do this? And there's been many times where you're like, I think you want to say like that's an awful idea, but you got me there. You helped me get there. And I deflected from it. I walked away from it. But it's just like, for anybody on this call, it's like just creating these never seen before strategies. Allow yourself to wander, your mind to wander. And I call that ideate. Everybody calls that ideation, but I love that time. Like it's often for me, the environment really impacts that too. I don't do any creative thinking in the office. I just can't do it. And I don't know if you guys have an opinion on why that is, but I need to be in nature. I need to be walking. I need to be exercising. And that's where like, I'm trying to do something different. How do I get there? And more often than not, 90% of the times the ideas go nowhere. But if you get that one that you're like, whoa, wait a second, and you start unpacking it and developing it, that's when kind of the rubber meets the road and you like just great things happen.
Amy,
That's awesome.
she does this when she's driving.
My business partner did that too. He would get in his car and just drive with no destination and end up back at where he left. And he's like, I just need to go for a drive. And I was like, all right. There's something for everyone, right?
Try to get my kids to sleep.
What's awesome. That?
I said I do that, but it's to try to get my kids to sleep.
Right.
Michel, I love the idea of connecting profits to people outside your company. Like that is a bit of a different strategy I haven't heard before, but I could see how powerful that might be. Next up, I'd love to ask you a bit about leadership development and career development. So specifically, where do you see most senior leaders getting stuck when it comes to leadership development?
For themselves or for their teams that report into them?
I'd be interested in both, actually, both for themselves and their teams. Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with yourself. I have a hard time believing that one can develop others if they're not developing themselves first, right? It's a kind of like the air mask analogy. When you're on a plane, you sort yourself out first, and then so you could be stronger for others. So for myself, it's worth noting I'm not a big consumer of books. I buy every book that comes out. I read very few. For me, it's like, I don't know if it's not very fancy. It's like I'm a huge adopter or listener of podcasts and understanding like who is it that I'm trying to emulate? Who am I trying to become? And I'll create a list of like a few people and just go into the podcast app and type their name in and just listen to every podcast they've been interviewed on, or if they have their own podcast. People like Sarah Blakely, Howard Schultz, individuals like this. But then I'm also a huge consumer of just any type of content related to leadership development and anything in that orbit. So there's a tool that I use, and I'm not actually I'm not certain how popular it is, but it's feedly.com. So FEEDLY.com. And it's an aggregator of websites. So if you have your top 10 websites that you visit on a given day that gives you leadership advice or motivation or learnings, you just take the URL and you dump it into the aggregator. And then in real time, when they post on those websites, it'll come into your feed. And that way you don't have to go to 10 different websites every single day to see what's happening. It'll aggregate it for you. But, also mentorship. Like my own mentorship. So I have these things called blind spots. These are the things that I am not good at, or I'm not an expert in. I have a lot of questions around this. So for me today, my blind spots are supply chain. I have to learn to build a supply chain. Finance is a blind spot. I know how to read a P&L. I know what a balance sheet is and so forth. And I know that good questions to ask, but not great questions. So those are two really big blind spots for me. So what do? I've identified them. So the self-awareness part matters. And then I go, who can help me? And then I go out to my network and try to find individuals that can help me. And where do you find these people? You know, Jason, you and I are part of the same entrepreneur group. So there, right? Where do people congregate that have these blind spots as expertise, but also like private Facebook groups? Like I don't go on Facebook very often as like I used to, but you can find private Facebook groups with the specific blind spot that you're looking for. And you'd be surprised how many people will share their time with you if you're specific on what you are looking for. Like, hey, I can I pick your brain? Doesn't work, right? Like, can I ask you some questions about supply chain and the producer that you actually use in this city? That's specific, right? That's going to get you a response. But going in blind is pretty disrespectful of the person's time that you're looking to level up your leadership ability with, or whatever trait that you're looking to improve. So that's what I do, and it works really well. But let's remember that we have to always be willing to pay it forward as well. There's going to be one time I was very off put by this individual on LinkedIn that I'm connected with that said, I don't have the time for everybody to be asking to pick my brain anymore. I'm stopping doing that. I was like, you know, shame on you. Like there is a time where you were on the other side of that fence, and there are professionals that could use your help. So let's not be that person. Especially if we've asked for people's time in the past. Now, on the flip side of that, to the second part of your question, Jason, what are we doing to develop the people that report into us and within our organizations? I'll go back to something I've already mentioned, is that like if there are direct reports that you have that you're looking to develop to be your next leader in the company, maybe even replace you in your role or leave the company, you have to intimately understand what success looks like for them. But the challenge is often people don't know. They've never been really like asked that question before. So it's our responsibilities is to help them discover that. You know, I've had team members in our hospitality company that didn't know, but now they know, right? One individual, Christina Perahar, didn't know what she wanted to do. She was in hospitality and she was a good manager, but she didn't know if she wanted to keep doing that. Eventually, after kind of months of working together and having conversations, she realized she wanted to be a learning and development specialist in the hospitality industry. So she got really niche. So it was my responsibility to dig it out of her. And Reese, I had mentioned something earlier to you, is you're really good at helping me get to my answer without telling me what I need to do. Because I think nobody wants to be told what to do, right? They want to arrive at the decision on their own. And that's what I did with Christina. Like I saw learning and development in her, and I kind of put her down that path, but let her arrive there on her own. So those are the things that you know I'm seeing on both, that I recommend on both sides. One, what to do for ourselves, and one, what to do for our team members, is just help them discover what that purpose is. And it could take time, and they should know that it's going to take time.
A quick follow-up question on that, and I really appreciate the compliment, Michel. That's a big one that I help you get there. It's definitely something that I try to do. But talking leadership development, and we are here to talk, you know, scaling culture. For those people out there who are in businesses that are growing fast, they can start to feel the wheels wobble on the culture a little bit, or maybe they can see it coming around the corner. How much time and effort should they be focusing on developing the leaders that they have versus bringing externals in? And how much of a role do you think leadership development and the skill of leaders plays in being able to scale a culture?
So I'll answer the first part. Is it's every day, right? Like it's not a quarterly initiative. It's literally something that you have to practice every day. And that could mean having daily conversations with your team members around skill sets they're trying to learn. It's just a constant pounding of this drum. I actually experienced, as an operator, a culture start to deteriorate. And it was my very company. As I was exiting to work on this next company that I'm building, I thought I had transferred over my skill sets to some single points of accountability within the culture to keep it going. But as everyone on this webinar can understand, and we've heard it before, is that it really does come from the top. And unfortunately, the culture I'd built started to deteriorate because people stopped pounding the drum. It became an afterthought. And, Reese, I've confided with you, it really hurt me, right? Because I was like, wow, everything we built is for naught. So that was a lesson that I could share with you with my experience, is that it just has to be something you discuss every day. And it's people exercise every day, people pray every day. When you're talking about your culture and becoming a part of the fabric of your company, it's got to be every day. And that could mean a multitude of different things. Like Reese, at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, the culture was embedded in us every day through huddle, right? You couldn't escape it. And I know that sounds funny, but like, we wanted it, right? And if it wasn't for you, you left on your own accord, right? Or fired, right? But yeah, the better is if they leave on their own accord, right? But that's that. And Reese, apologies, your second part to your question is escaping me.
Yeah, that's okay. It's just around like how important is it? How much time and effort should they be spending on this? You've kind of answered the question and the whole way through. We actually have a question from the audience, and I apologize for the background noise. I'm going to mute myself after I ask this question. Someone's banging on the radiator in the office here in the next door room. But Amy asked a question: how do you suggest we do this if we have really large teams? And she asked that as you were talking about beating the drum every day and helping leaders to beat that drum every day on your behalf.
Yeah. So if you have a really large team, you can do that for the entire organization. So for example, I'll use the huddle example at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. That was for everyone. However, you could also bring that to the departmental level also. This doesn't always have, like, you don't always have to blanket the entire company. Now, with that being said, if there's something that you are doing within your department that's really elevating the culture of that specific department, you want to share those best practices with your other colleagues that are leading their departments, because what's going to happen is there's going to be fracturing. And we've probably all experienced this if we're working in medium and large size companies, is that like one department seems like they're always jovial, they have high engagement and so forth, but then the other team is struggling. Reese, what was the name of the person that asked the question?
It was Amy.
Amy. So Amy, if you're doing some things that you have learned by way of listening to a podcast or something, you can pilot it in your own department first, or your own group of team members, see how that works. And then if it works, you could be the case study for the company, and then it grows throughout the entire organization. I like to do that because, one, it's almost like piloting a project within something that you have control of, and you can move quickly to bring it to surface and deploying the strategy, or you could shut it down if it's not working and try something else. So that's my recommendation of how to kind of scale within the company.
That's awesome. And kind of related to scaling, I thought one of the earlier questions from Gurinder was, how do you scale culture across different countries, or maybe different locations, for example?
I do. So I'll ask. I'll do it, and I'll answer in two regards. One, full disclaimer: I have never grown a company across multiple countries, so I cannot. And I'm always very kind of self-aware with what I speak to as a quote unquote expert. I'm not an expert in this. I have no experience. However, a book I recommend reading is No Rules Rules. It is written by the current CEO of Netflix, and how their culture in North America is much different than the culture in Italy. It's much different than the culture in South Korea. And he describes all of the lessons. I believe it's 2 chapters that he goes in great detail of what they had to do. They interviewed employees in the book. They interview employees that speak to this. So I think I don't think I'm going to be great at sharing the story, but I'll try. This engineer in South Korea received an email from a colleague of hers in North America, and she was really off put by how short the email was. It seemed like the American colleague was upset with her or angry, and she sat on that for weeks, feeling like this remorse or resent toward this employee. But really, the North American employee didn't know she did anything wrong in the first place, because that's how they speak in their country, right? Like that's, we're often we can be direct in North America, whereas in South Korea, apparently it should be longer-winded. There's more of a salutation and a greeting at the beginning of the email and so forth. So that I can't speak to it with a real world experience, but my recommendation is to go read that book. It was a really paradigm shifting book for me. And then Jason, your second question was around different locations, cultures of different locations. I'll just reiterate the same thing that I said to Amy. If something's working in office A, bring it over to office B. And there should be single points of accountability for your process and your kind of initiatives within your culture, whether that's your vice president of culture or whomever. These individuals at each location should be talking very regularly. A Big Mac is a Big Mac is a Big Mac. If you get a Big Mac in Toronto or Japan or Sydney, Australia, it's the same, I think. I'm pretty sure it is in Australia, but culture should be the same, right? Like if your customers do business with you in one location and experience a different culture in the next, you can't scale. It's just not going to work. And we think about companies that have done that poorly, and don't be them, right? So that's my recommendation for that.
I think just to add on to that, some great comments there, Michel, but I really think that there are some universal things that everybody cares about. People want to make a good living, they want to be able to contribute to something, do meaningful work, be safe, have safe families, and there's tons of research around this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all that sort of stuff. But I think there are fundamental things that every person in the world really cares about. And so when you're, again, I'm not an expert on cross-border, but when you're scaling culture cross-border, there's probably, in addition to those fundamental human things, there's probably some fundamental things that the people who are attracted to your organization care about as well. And while the details of that will be a little bit different, there's always similarities. There's always some type of similarity and consistency to be found across the board.
That's a good point. And because in the book, they actually talk about, in this Netflix book, they talk about the similarity being like, this is a innovative company. So everybody at the company wants to work for an innovative company, but aside from that and maybe a few other things, that's where it might get a little different.
Yeah, I think what's really important gets distilled down, right?
Yeah. One other comment related to Netflix and scaling culture, because I'm actually a huge fan of them as well. I know, for example, the core value, they're a massive company with employees all over the world. Their core values are consistent across the whole organization. And then in addition to that, the core values play a role in hiring questions, like you can question people whether people are fit or not a fit for specific values. The core values play out in performance reviews, so people know whether they're living up to those values, and like this is across the entire structure / organization, which is kind of like foundational piece to scaling culture. And I've always found that really valuable. If you can have a few simple rules, repeat them often, your team can often adopt those, especially if they're given tools to disseminate those easily inside the organization. But sorry, Reese, you were saying.
No, you're right, mate. No, it's a great point. And I think it's one of the fundamental problems in scale that are really difficult to solve, whether you're looking at like level of structure for process or whether you're looking at culture, whatever lens you're looking at it through. It's this decision of like, what scales and what doesn't? What are the parts that are repeatable and will work in multiple locations, and what are the parts that won't? And I think it's part of why it's so difficult is because it's a shifting target. You know, what worked yesterday won't work tomorrow, and there's so many variables that are difficult to understand. But that's why I think keeping it tight, just like fewer the better, is really important. I see another question from the audience here. Kevin has said, has this new virtual work world adversely or positively affected most organizations' cultures? Michel, you want to grab that one?
Yeah. So I think everybody has an opinion on this. Here's mine. I think it's been worse. I just don't see how we build the same types of relationships. Could it get better? Perhaps, yes. It's still in its infancy. We've been at this for a year now. I just, I draw a lot of parallels between the relationships in my personal life as I do in my professional life. And I've never heard of long distance relationships working very well. And while I do think there's going to be a hybrid of in office and virtual, which I'm an advocate of, let's say 3 days in the office, 2 days virtually, I'm not a big advocate of doing the full virtual, largely for a number of reasons. And I posted something on LinkedIn that was well received yesterday on this very topic. It's, before the pandemic, when I hire somebody to be a part of our culture, I hire them because I like their personality. I like their character. These are the type of individuals that I want to be around in person, not virtually. Next, like mentoring, when you mentor someone, I think there's a certain energy that is shared, that is optimized when you're in person. I think mentoring is hard. There's this barrier in between us when it's done virtually. Can it get done? Yes. But I don't think, I think that intimacy of being in person really matters. Like Reese, think of our time at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, the early mentors that we had. There's something to be said about that in-person relationship. And I'm a sucker for a nice water cooler moment, right? Like a nice moment of connection. I don't know if technology is going to be able to replace that. But on the other flip side to that, what is having more freedom of working from home going to do for our cultures? I think it's going to help as well. Being able to know that you can work from home and take care of a sick child, or needing to be home for a TV repair or something like this. I think that matters as well, finding a balance. But I am not, my opinion, I'm not an advocate of 100% virtual. Because and here's another thing too, being in a room, Reese, remember being in a room together with whiteboards and markers and interrupting each other, debating, scribbling stuff down. There's something about that energy in the room that adds to the culture, right? Like having a beer with someone in person at a bar, and you just feeding off each other's energy. I can't see that happening exceptionally while being 100% virtual.
I still feel like interrupting you is appropriate, whether we're in person or not. But,
there's a long line of people that do this in my life, Reese.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, look, I think I actually slightly different opinion to you on this one. I think that there's a place for full virtual, and I also think there's a place for full in person. I don't think hybrid is right for every organization, and I think it depends on the individuals that you're built around, the skill sets that you require to get the job done, the types of work that you're doing, the type of customer interactions that you have. Like, I think if you're in an organization where there's a lot of client or customer focus and customer care is really important, you're likely hiring really people-focused people who want to be around other people. They're going to struggle to be remote all the time. I think, there's other organizations that are far more technology focused. That's their advantage. And a lot of the people who are task oriented and technology oriented are less people oriented and have a much lower need for connection. And so I think it depends on the outcomes that you're looking for and the type of culture you're trying to build as to what the right model is. What I'm really excited about as an outcome of this work from home situation we've found ourselves in is that it has opened up so many more options. It's not now 9 to 5 in the office. Work from home is a really big deal to most people. I think it's going to open up this spectrum of work and spectrum of ways that we engage in work that I think is going to take a long time for us to sort through and figure out what works and what doesn't and what's right and what's not. To your point, we've been doing it for a year. We're still deep in infancy. We've been organizing to get stuff done for thousands of years. And, up until a couple of years ago, this wouldn't have even been possible. So we as a large group have a lot to learn and a lot to figure out. But I'm excited by the opportunities it opens up, I think.
Awesome. And I'm just looking at the time, and I want to be, really respectful of everybody's time here. So I'm going to start moving to wrap everything up. And I'm going to go back to a quick screen share. So as always, we got some great takeaways for everybody. We are going to email through a PDF, which summarizes how to keep your remote teams connected. And similar to previous weeks, we are setting up a mastermind. So it's funny, Michel mentioned earlier the importance of having networks you can go to learn from your peers. That's exactly what this is all about. It's a place where you could talk to other senior HR professionals, share your pain points, and learn from one another, just to, build amazing cultures. And I'm going to pop up a survey or a poll question. Give me a second. So if you're interested in learning more, just reply yes. There is a waiting list for this group now. We already have one mastermind up and running. I think the other one's just about full. But yeah, if you're interested in participating in said mastermind, just click yes. If not, no. And if undecided, no answer is also an answer as well. So all good. And I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Thank you, everybody. And I think with that, we can move to officially wrap. So my 2 cents, Michel, awesome takeaways. You addressed tons of questions, and I really wanted to thank you so much for your time. And Reese, Michel, any kind of final comments from your end?
You go, mate.
Oh, sure. No, just thank you for your time, everyone. I really enjoyed just speaking about the topic I'm passionate about, and we all are passionate about. And thank you for reserving the time. And if you want to connect, I am Michel Falcon on LinkedIn and Facebook and so forth. So you can find me there.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, mate. Really appreciate it. It's always great to hang out.
Likewise.
Right on.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.